We're beating that horse real good.
Sorry, the more times you beat a horse, it doesn't turn it into a Ferrari. It just is more dead.
It's just a lot squishier.
It's a lot squishier.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast, the weekly show where we talk about the video game development industry. I'm your host, Chris, joined as always by Baby, who's in my lap, Pumpkin, who is over there, and then every week we have a special guest. This week we are welcoming back Ross Hersemann, lawyer extraordinaire in the video game and interactive industry. How are you doing, Ross?
Well, Chris, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it has been it's been a bit. You have had stuff that you've been doing. You've been being an adult and taking care of business on these Wednesday mornings. So I'm glad to have you back.
It's good to be back. It's been in lawyer world. We're on summer vacation a little bit. Things slow down a little bit this time of year, so I am able to take a break from my studies and my teaching at DePaul University, and it's good to be back talking about some video game stuff here.
Lawyers get vacations? What?
Not really. We call them that, but I wouldn't call it a vacation.
Yeah, I think I told you, but I went on a family cruise in May, and when I went there, I was like, I am not going to do work while I'm on the cruise. So like, I brought my laptop and stuff. I ended up doing a little bit, some emails and things, just a couple of things that, there's always some plates that need some spinning. But more or less, I did not. But I was surprised by how well, this has nothing to do with anything, but how well the Wi-Fi on the cruise ship worked. Like, it was very surprising. I probably could have played like World of Warcraft or something on it if I had so chosen, but I did not. I tried to be disconnected from video games and electronics and everything, so...
that'll all be waiting for you when you get back. You got to get some sun. Go check out the pool or the bar, or the casino or the buffet.
Yeah, well, it was an Alaska cruise, so it was chilly out there.
Right,
in
check
the
out
pool.
The penguins.
Yeah, we did. We did do some a little bit of swimming, but it was on one of the weird days. Overall, the seas were pretty calm, except the day I went swimming, and so you're just in this like giant glass where you're like, but it was fun. My niece had a good time. She loved it. She's 4 and she loved being just in the water while I was throwing her around. But yeah, so episode 30, our little show here is growing up, if you can believe it. So that's pretty exciting. We're more than halfway through the year, and we've only missed one episode because we had some stuff going on when I was in Alaska. So there you go. Couple reminders for folks watching. You can join us at the Sandbox.Space. That's the address. Don't forget so the Sandbox.Space. You can sign up for the weekly email where we post all of the articles that we discuss during the show, as well as a link to this YouTube video if you want to rewatch the podcast. And then also, of course, don't forget GDEX, www.thegdex.com, where you can sign up if you want to exhibit. We still need some volunteers. If you are in the industry and you want to give a talk, even if you want to do something like, I don't know, a board game session, like if you want to do a game or D&D or something, we've got space. So if that's of interest to you, you can go to thegdex.com/apply, and we've got the apply things. But overall, things are going well, and we would love to see you at GDEX, so make sure to keep an eye on that. Rossifer, you want to get started?
Let's dive in. What's new this week, Chris?
Okay, so I am going to jump back to something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Let's see if I can grab my...
Go to the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, not too far, but we have been talking... about Xbox lately. So let me turn this on. So now there's this thing. Amazon is now selling a no console required Xbox bundle. Amazon has launched a Xbox no console required bundle coinciding with the release of the Fire Stick TV cloud gaming app, enabling Xbox Game Pass users So they had a link here. Is this it? Yeah. So here you go. You can get a controller, the Fire Stick, and appears to be 1 month of Games Pass. And over the past few weeks, we have been talking about, oh, this is on IGN from Robert Anderson. Um, we have been talking recently about how Xbox obviously has been really pushing their Games Pass. Like, that's not a surprise. But the rumors that the next Xbox are going to be manufactured by people other than Microsoft, and that Microsoft might just create a sort of series of spec documents that manufacturers are required to adhere to, and then manufacturers can make their own Xboxes. So you might see like an Asus Xbox or an Alienware Xbox or whatever, uh, which it just seems that Microsoft is moving more and more away from manufacturing their own consoles, but more importantly, I think viewing the Xbox as a brand, as a console, and instead viewing it more as like a larger gaming brand, if that makes sense. So, do you want to get down, sweetie? You want to say hi to audience? Hello. I need to get her a haircut. It's getting a little shaggy, but so Ross, what do you think of Xbox as sort of this brand idea, and how will that impact the industry if they start moving away from being the third console in our three-legged console stool, whatever metaphor we want to use?
Sure. I'm intrigued. I think it's not a new idea, but it'll be interesting to see it applied here because to your question of or to your point of what happens if Microsoft lets third parties make their own consoles, makes their own hardware, maybe in different configurations. We've kind of seen that before. Being a 90s kid as myself, you'll remember in the early 90s, we had like the 3DO platform that was made by several different manufacturers. We had Panasonic, we had a couple different hardware versions of the same platform. And that did some cool things for opening up that platform for third-party software development and licensing. It let people buy in at different tiers for different hardware, so there can be an entry-level bare bones system, there can be a bells and whistles, more advanced platform at different price points. So that's interesting. It might, kind of open up some competition on hardware and enable some different software. So I'm intrigued by that. But I do think it seems like Microsoft is definitely leaning in the software as a service platform, establishing Game Pass on PC as they have, as a Netflix for games. I'm intrigued to see what their future is going to be in that direction because I think it just offers a lot of opportunities for folks. If you don't need an Xbox console anymore to tap into your Game Pass network, if you're using a Fire Stick, which I think is what's part of the Amazon bundle here, or if you're using an app through your smart TV, uh, that's a really viable option for folks who want to get access to that same content without having to fork out for the latest hardware. It might kind of prolong a brand a little bit. I don't know. What do you think? I know you're a big PlayStation fan, so is this a sign of victory for PlayStation out there, or is this Xbox changing the conversation and kind of moving the goalposts?
Yeah, so I am not a PlayStation fanboy, sort of in the traditional sense. I sort of have an anti-Microsoft bias because I've been an Apple kid since the 80s. And I think that I think Microsoft just in general, I'm just going to say this, people can feel differently. I think in general, Microsoft makes subpar products. And I think you can see that in the fact that they tend to make things, the Zune, the phone, I mean, we could go on, that just aren't as good as their competitors. I also think Microsoft has this weird corporate um, culture, maybe, of like not knowing what they have. So, like, I'm one of the people that thinks the Microsoft Xbox Connect is fucking rad. We have used that thing a lot, and like we've done a ton of development on it in like the healthcare space, and that thing is great. And it's a shame that they killed it. And so it seems like Microsoft is one of those companies, a little bit Google-ish in their way, where it's like if they have something that they don't quite know what to do with, they like only keep it around for 6 months and then they like drown it in the bathwater or whatever. Um, that all being said, I think that the industry is better when it has three players in it. I think the video game industry has shown again and again over time that Nintendo, Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation, that was a good thing. Um, I also think that how do I phrase this? PlayStation and I was going to say Sega. PlayStation and Xbox are in a more similar lane than Nintendo is right now in terms of the games industry. And I think without a doubt, so jumping back real fast, I like PlayStation better than Xbox just because I think there's better quality games, there's more interesting games on it right now. But I had an Xbox 360, did not have a PlayStation 3. I had a PlayStation 1, 2, and I switched over to Xbox 360 mostly because it's networking and sort of online playing was really, really good. But what are you saying? PC cough cough, mobile cough cough. I just don't like consoles are its own thing. Like people keep talking about, well, what about the PC master race? It's like console players are not making buying decisions on PC versus console. Like that's just not how it works, right? If you want to play Nintendo games, you're not like, oh, should I go buy a Nintendo Switch or should I get a PC? Like if you want to play on a PC, you buy a PC and you play on a PC. And but it's not a direct competitor. And the reason we all know this is because both Xbox and PlayStation release PC games. They release their exclusive titles on PC, which means they don't view it as a competitor against their primary platform. So,
We'll push back on you on that a little bit because I think that they do because if they didn't, I think we'd get same day releases for a lot of those first party titles. The fact that we got, The Last of Us remastered 2.0 on PC, years after we got it on PS5, PS4, and PS3, I think says that they do consider them
I,
competitive. We don't see God of War released the same day on Steam as we do on PS5 or Horizon Zero Dawn. Staggering.
sure.
I think it's one of those things where a couple of years have gone by and they've made their big buck, off of their,
Well,
exclusivity off their
I'm
console
gonna agree
platform,
with
and
you.
then it's just extra money.
Yeah. So I'm gonna agree with you, and I'm gonna push back on you a little bit.
Ooh.
I think everything is within the context of its time, right? And
Mm.
PlayStation is a notoriously conservative company. And so they've been testing the waters on PC releases over the past 4 years with things like, Horizon and Last of Us and whatnot. But we're starting to see, I don't think you're ever going to get a day and date because that doesn't make any sense, right? So if you consider that a competitive thing, then okay. But I think just being able to have your game on your platform, uh, your exclusive game on that platform when it first comes out. I think it just looks good for the console. And let's not forget that like QA testing on a PC is maddening. So if you can just make your game for PlayStation 5, get it out there, get the good ratings, get the feedback, then I think that's what PlayStation is going to do. But we are seeing PlayStation releasing PC versions of their exclusives at a quicker rate than we have in the past. So I agree with you, and then I also slightly disagree with you. But that's the beauty of the internet. Uh, but I do think that, like, for example, PlayStation, we talked about this last week. PlayStation Plus is better because Xbox created Games Pass. And Games Pass only exists because Xbox is losing the console war against PlayStation. And PlayStation 4 is only really was only really able to be the market leader against the Xbox One. Well, one Xbox really screwed up the Xbox One marketing, but ignoring that part, because uh, the sort of humble pie that they had to eat with the PS3 against the Xbox 360, and the Xbox 360 just being, despite its obvious flaw with the Red Ring of Death, right, like being a complete disaster, um, the PlayStation 3 really stumbled for a long time in that generation. And so there's been this back and forth, this push between these two that I think has made them be better for consumers. I do worry if the Xbox platform disappears as a console. And again, this is from a guy that, like, outside of work, I'm not going to buy an Xbox. I just have no need at this point. None of the exclusives are exciting. Um, I can't even really name you an exclusive right now that, like, is super exciting on the Xbox side. I mean, can you name me one?
No love for Forza, huh? Because I always used to point to Halo, but Halo's cross-platform as well now. So Forza
And
and
Halo is not, it's just not getting the love that it used to.
well, Halo hasn't been loved for a long time. But yeah, I've been pointing to Forza and Sea of Thieves for a long time. But since we talked last, Sea of Thieves is now multi-platform as well. So I think you're right that Microsoft is shifting a little bit away from exclusivity. That's something that PlayStation and Sony really do well. Is
Yeah.
their exclusive titles? That's something they're very, very good at. I'm intrigued to see what Xbox and Microsoft are doing with the Game Pass platform because especially seeing it marketed the way that Amazon is pushing this bundle, this console-less, bundle for Prime Day. It's interesting to see because it seems to me like it has more in common with something like Amazon's Luna or Google Stadia platform, where if we're not reliant on hardware, where are people going to get their games and build their digital libraries? And I know so many folks have done that with Steam. Some people have done that with Epic. It's just another format war. It's just now it's digital instead of hardware. If people want to use their whatever controllers they like or whatever headsets, mics, and other, peripherals they want, it's going to come down to the user interface, reliability, and branding, which I think Xbox has in spades. So maybe they're just changing the conversation, and competing on a different front.
Do you think the
You know,
Xbox brand
so
is as strong as it was in the past? Just the brand, just when you think about Xbox.
just the brand, just that big X and green everywhere. I think so. I think it's still one of the most recognizable brands in game spaces, and I think that you can look at how many folks tune in to Microsoft and Xbox announcements to see what's new. See what hardware is coming, see what games are coming. You can see how much chatter there is for that. I think it's still, a heavy hitter in terms of all of that. I know lots of folks are very excited for all of their new Bethesda properties. The new Doom game that they've got coming out and in the works is something I'm excited about. So we'll see what
Yeah,
happens there.
isn't that's multi-platform though? So
It is. Yeah, a lot of them
yeah,
are. Yeah.
yeah. I agree. I think Microsoft needed to buy those properties, and I think that this pivot is important. I'm really hoping that Outer Worlds 2 becomes. They're saying it's exclusive. I hope it becomes either timed exclusive or not exclusive because I did really enjoy the Outer Worlds. Um,
hmm
and again, I want to re-say before we go to our next article, which you so succinctly brought us to. Um, I want to say that having these two makes them better because I think PlayStation would not be the company it is today if it did not get that punch in the gut from the Xbox 360. Um, I think that it the PlayStation 3, the first 4 years of that console took such a hit that it required PlayStation to really just completely redo both their sort of outward customer facing look as well as their company culture in general.
hmm
And so I think that that's really, really important. But that does bring us to my next article here. Is Xbox Game Pass no longer the best deal in gaming? This is from GameSpot from Tamur Hussein. Xbox has announced major changes to its Game Pass subscription, and truthfully, they're so muddled, even I struggle with laying them all out. But let's try. So, Pumpkin, you're killing me here. So, starting in September, new members to the Xbox ecosystem will no longer, I think, will no longer be allowed to subscribe to Xbox Games Pass for console. However, those currently subscribed will be allowed to maintain their subscription, which will include the program's back catalog as well as day one game access, as long as they maintain their subscription. New Xbox Game Pass users then will get a choice of a few different subscription tiers, the first being Games Pass Standard. This tier will be priced at $15 a month and gives users access to the back catalog of games and Xbox Live Gold, which is now referred to as Games Pass Core. You got all this, Ross? However,
Series
Standard will
X
not.
Core X Max Pro
Yeah.
Plus. Yeah.
However, Standard will not include any day one releases or Xbox Cloud gaming. Xbox, hey, sweetie. Xbox Games Pass Ultimate features will not be changed and will still include PC Games Pass, but is seeing a price hike and will now be $20 a month. Similarly, PC Games Pass remains the same, but will now be $12 a month for those looking solely for access to online multiplayer. Xbox Games Pass Core, formerly Xbox Live Gold, will now cost you $75 a month. And just for good measure, Microsoft has also implemented a new rule in which existing users can only stack up to 13 months of Xbox Game Pass for console, though users who have currently stacked more than that will not be affected. Holy shit. Like, what is going on over there?
Why don't they
That,
like me?
so Xbox Games Pass, which we just got done talking about, is great, and I would say is probably one of the best deals in gaming you can get,
I
is
take
now
back
becoming.
everything I said. I'm switching to the Atari VCS.
Yeah, hey sweetie. Um, what is this just Microsoft being Microsoft again, where it's like they cannot get out of their own damn way and they have to make everything more confusing for a company worth billions and billions of dollars. All right, I'm gonna go on a rant for a second, okay? So
Oh
just
boy,
strap
here we
in.
go.
I was talking about my friend, my roommate, who's not my roommate, but I call him my roommate, Jeremy, the other day. And I was like, I just do not get how all of these large companies, these multi billion dollar companies, cannot get their shit together the way Apple does. And you can crap on Apple all you want for whatever you want to, but their customer service is amazing. Um, like you can go into them and talk to them. Generally, if you call them, you can usually get somebody on the phone. Hell, during the pandemic, when my keyboard on my laptop started getting funky and you couldn't get anything fixed because everything was closed, there were no repair shops anywhere. I wrote Tim Cook, like CEO Tim Cook. I wrote him an email. One of his people responded and sent me a free keyboard and like a free gift card, like just over email, right? And yet I call and like I'll try to talk to like AT&T, and it'll take you an hour just to get somebody on the phone, and it's like maddening. Like I don't need you to be like on par with Apple, though that would be lovely. But like, could you at least be in the same realm? Could we be reading the same book here? And that's how I feel a lot about like some of these branding things, like with Microsoft, where you guys have been doing this a long time. Why can you not get your branding together? Like, this is a mess. This is an absolute mess. What's going on, Ross? Fix it. Calm me down.
I
Talk me off the ledge.
Maybe we just need Apple to get back in the console game. Let's bring back the Pippin 2.
Yeah. Do you think
That's a
Apple will
deep
buy?
cut
Should
for
Apple
all
buy
of our
PlayStation?
users. Should Apple buy PlayStation? Why not? Why not? Let's shake it up. Everything else is on fire in 2024. Why not?
What's PlayStation's current valuation?
I'm sure they could, Chris. I'm sure they
Says
could.
according to OVH.net, whatever the hell that is. This is just a quick cap. Their market capitalization is 155.91 billion. I think Apple's got like 300 billion just in cash.
There you go. I think this is a side effect of our console market kind of blurring with our streaming market because everything you're describing about Xbox's tiers for Game Pass, it sounds a lot more like Netflix and Max and Paramount and all of our streaming channels rebundling and
Yeah,
scaling and getting more expensive. It seems like it's the same conversation. And I'm kind of two minds about this because, as someone in the industry, I think games are woefully underfunded, and I don't think there's any amount of money that we could throw at game development that would be too much. We will always find somewhere to spend it, and hopefully, the first place we spend it is on taking care of the people who actually make games. But as a consumer, I get frustrated because when I compare the cost of something like Game Pass against something like Netflix or Spotify or somewhere else I get my entertainment, I have to start looking at that evaluation of what gives me the biggest bang for my buck. And pound for pound, hour for hour in terms of pure entertainment, usually it is games. So even if Game Pass is getting more expensive, it's still probably the best value for how many hours of entertainment I'm getting out
Oh,
of it.
absolutely.
That still doesn't
Absolutely.
make me love paying, up to and including, I think you said $75 at one point, for one of those tiers. It can get pricey, especially when you start stacking multiple memberships. I have a subscription, my wife has one, and we use it to play games, via the cloud on multiple machines in the house. And, it can start stacking. It can start getting really pricey at the end of the day. So I hope that they streamline some of those things because I read contracts for a living and I love diving into end user license agreements for fun. And I couldn't follow all those different tiers they have for their different pricing models. So I hope they simplify that and streamline it a little bit, make it more user friendly.
Hmm. I agree. I think that video games, I'm in a weird space because I agree that video games, I think dollar per value is great. Like I've been playing Fallout 76 a lot, which I got for free. I did the like, what's it called? Fallout First, like the monthly subscription thing I did for a month. And I think it was like $12. And I've put a ton of hours into that game. So I think hour per dollar ratio. Um, and I've told you this, but since COVID, a little bit before COVID, but particularly during COVID, I've been really focusing on just trying to get like my life into a good space. So one of the things I've been focusing is my finances, and I'm actually like this close to being completely debt free after these 5 years here. And one of the things that I started doing was just playing video games, which is kind of a weird thing to say, is like, how is playing video games helping your life? But like, I'm not going out to restaurants and eating. I'm not going out to bars and spending money on drinks. I can spend the time watching, stuff on my PlayStation. I can watch YouTube. I can play games, and it keeps me from spending a lot of money, which has been great. However, I do think that we need to this is what we need to do. We're never going to do it. Humanity is not capable of this on a grand scale, I don't think. But I think we all need to just take a breath, pull ourselves back, and um, look at games and entertainment in a different way. I think we keep pushing, we keep wanting to push like the 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 frontier of graphics and whatever, because that's an easy way to sell games, right? Is just make them look better. But it costs a lot of money, like the amount of work to go from like to create 4K assets is pretty sizable. And then you're looking at a game that's 10, 15, 20 hours long that's going to cost you $200 million to make. Like, how many studios in the world can actually deliver a game of that size? It's not that many. So I think even if we keep shoveling money into the space, it just doesn't seem sustainable to me. I think we need to be looking at games from a more broad lens and look at like all these indie games that could be doing some really cool stuff. Like let's look at more smaller and mid-sized studios and the games that they create. Um, and obviously I'm big on the indie space, and so are you, with small business indie studios and stuff. So I feel like um, we could be making more. I guess we could be better stewards of our resources in the industry than we have been. Uh, and then, of course, like that's not even going into things like publishers and investors and like the Embracer Group and stuff. I mean, we could talk about that shit all day long, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I think that we as gamers do need to maybe set our expectations a little bit, because if we're expecting every game to be on par with Last of Us Part Two or something, then we're gonna need to, or The Witcher. I just saw CD Projekt Red announce that The Witcher 4 is their most advanced title to date. Now, of course, I remember a little old game called Cyberpunk also saying that, so we'll see. Um, but are you going to willing to spend 100, 120, $150 on a game? You know, like what if The Witcher 4 is like absolutely amazing, one of the best RPGs we've ever seen, and can give you 200 to 1,000 hours worth of playtime? Is that worth 150 bucks?
No, it might be, and it's one of those things where I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but I think a lot of folks don't think about how much money they actually spend on entertainment. If you have Netflix for 6 months, chances are you're spending $20 a month on that. And if you only watch a stand-up special a week, if you only watch a movie a month, I don't know how much free time people have to actually be binging things, watching things all the time, but chances are you're spending that much money already. Uh, I just think that people don't like that $120 pill. So maybe it's, time to shift that model into more episodic installments. Maybe instead of, a 40-hour campaign at $120, we do smaller bites, releasing a new chapter, a new volume, a new campaign every 6 months in a smaller chunk, and then all of a sudden people are happy to spend more over time. I don't know. I feel
So
like
we
it's
we've
got more
tried
to
that
do with
before.
psychology.
I
Mhm.
mean, we've tried the episodic stuff before, and I would make the argument because I do like that idea. I think it's interesting, but I would make the argument that the new Final Fantasy game is doing that.
Mhm.
It's doing with remake into rebirth, and there was a big article about how rebirth, despite being a significantly larger and better game than remake, saw a sharp drop off in sales from FF7 remake. Now, maybe over time they'll make that up. Maybe when the trilogy concludes, um, people will come back to it. Um, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know the answer to this question because there's just so much content nowadays that it's just like if you're not being grabbed right away, something else has stolen your player, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's hard. And for somebody who's trying to build a games industry here in Ohio, who is focusing on building sustainable companies that can last 10, 20, 30 plus years, I do have to think about what is the best way that you can set these companies up for success. And is that making games that only have a 2 year timeline for development so that they can get out there? Um, is the risk of a 5 year dev cycle just too much? Um, I don't know. I mean, what I try to tell people is that 2 to 3 years is like kind of our benchmark. And if you're going above 3 years, you need to have you need to have a really solid reason why, and two, you need to make sure as shit. Oh, Discord, thanks for. You need to make sure as shit that you can afford that extension to your runway.
Well, Chris, what if we just start developing right now and we all agree that whenever the game is done, 5 years or 8 years from now, we just all share the profits via rev share and we laugh all the way to the bank?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I'd like to laugh to the bank someday instead of going there with my head hung, being like, "Oh God, I gotta pay all these bills."
Mm.
Um, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're trying to build an ecosystem that will kind of do that sort of thing here in Ohio. But it requires it requires time and it requires money. That's the other tricky thing about games, unless you sort of do your episodic approach, is that unlike other software products where you can kind of get to an MVP, get it out there, maybe start generating revenue, and then build on top of it over time, most games need to be more or less done on release. You can always add or have expansions or DLCs, but like games are a very like, so you have a piece of software, you put it out there, and then you can build and layer up and add things to it, right? Games from start to finish kind of need to be done. You can't be like, well, we're gonna release this game, but it doesn't have jumping, and then we're gonna add jumping later, right? You're like, well, if it doesn't have jumping, I can't move anywhere. Or like, you know, you're only gonna be able to, there's 6,000 guns, but you can only shoot five of them. Like,
Mm.
okay. But you could release a piece of software that's like, hey, we're going to allow you to share, friends lists, but we don't have the friends system out yet, and people will be like, okay, well, a friend system would be cool, but I don't need it for this piece of software to work. It's really hard to make a game that has all these component parts that fit together to make the experience. How do you release them without those component parts, right? So you just have to put so much groundwork in to make a game function. And that's the same thing with like demos and betas, right? Like it's in essence when you're getting to a beta, you've pretty much built the fucking game. There may be a lot of bugs and a lot of stuff you got to polish and work around, but like when you're showing a vertical slice, like I mean, you're showing a pretty large percentage of what you plan on having in the game. Um, so I don't know. It's tricksy, man.
You only get
Uh,
that first chance to make a first impression. Uh,
yep.
and you can lose people very quickly, and it doesn't matter if it's a corner coffee shop or a game you've been working on for 5 years. If people come in to see what you have on the first day and everything's on fire, if you're lucky, they might give you a second chance 6 months later to check back in. And if your house isn't in order, they're not going to come back. So
Yep.
having
And
sustainable dev cycles and having finished products on launch day is important. And that's a lesson not just for indie gamers that we love working with. That's for AAA studios as well, who promise first day functionality and then try and patch everything with day one updates. I know
yeah.
that's one of the biggest
Oh,
complaints I hear from other gamers is I bought this AAA title, I spent $75 and it's supposed to do X and Y and Z, and it doesn't even do an A, B, and C. So it's
absolutely.
hard.
Absolutely. And there's also like an ethical component of it too when you promise something and then you release it. Again, Cyberpunk, No Man's Sky was an example of that. Both of those games.
Hmm.
Fallout 76. Fallout 76 was a dumpster fire on release, and I think that it's come a long way. I've really enjoyed it. It's got that Bethesda jank that drives me crazy. But then I also look at like what other engine is kind of doing the complex stuff that a Cyberpunk or Fallout is doing. Like, there's very few that are doing that sort of level of complexity and interaction. So you give them a little bit, I guess, of Bethesda jank. Um, so interestingly, along these lines, I got this article here from Video Game Chronicle. This is by Jordan Midler. Resident Evil 7 on iOS has reportedly been purchased by fewer than 2,000 people. And I know they were making a big deal about this a few months ago, but according to analysis by mobilegamer.biz based on estimates from app figures, so who knows, right? Whatever. This game has been just over 80. This game has been downloaded. Somebody needs to edit these articles, I think. Just over 83,000 times since it was released in July. In order to unlock the full game, players must pay $20. Capcom, according to app figures, Capcom has earned $28,140 from this game. And that's prior to 30% Apple's cut. So that's kind of interesting because Apple does represent arguably the largest gaming platform in the world on their iOS devices. Is it just that this isn't the type of game that mobile gamers are looking for? Is the price point too high for an ecosystem that's used to having a lot of free to play games? I just found that like that is a shockingly low number of downloads for a AAA game like that. Like if that was the console release, that would be absolutely,
That would be abysmal. I
yeah,
think it's just a snake. I think this is a good example of a snake eating its own tail because you've got a AAA title with tons of brand recognition. You've got a game that is good, but you also have it available in other places. You have it on console, you have it on PC, you have it in VR, now you have it in mobile. And when I
yeah,
look at figures like that, my question is always like, who is this for? Not just a demographic of who would like this game, but who would buy this game on this platform, who would play it on this platform, who doesn't already own it on another platform or prefer
yeah,
to play it somewhere else. So when I see 2000 there, I'm like, well, that might be exactly how many people exist who want to play that game, who want to play it on mobile, who either don't have it somewhere else or who do have it somewhere else, who love it so much they want it in more than one place. And just the narrower you tailor your scope on that focus demographic, the smaller your place is going to be. I mean that's a fantastic game. That's a very successful franchise. So when I see numbers like that, I don't think it's because the game is bad. I just think it's because chances are we've already beat that horse to death. We've already sold that product.
we're beating that horse real good.
Sorry, the more times you beat a horse, it doesn't turn it into a Ferrari. It just is more dead. Um,
It's just a lot squishier.
just a lot
Yeah,
squishier.
I think Resident Evil 7 is a great game,
Mhm.
but I don't think it's a game I would want to play on my phone. Again, I'm just old and I complain about stuff, and there's too many people on my lawn. Um, but I'm the kind of guy I like to sit down and play a game on my TV and be immersed in it. I don't watch movies on my phone. Um, it's just not
And there
how
are
I
some
choose.
people who only engage with content that way, so I
Yeah.
know that demographic exists. There are folks out there who want to play a completely immersive, horror shooter on their phones, and they have the hardware for it, or the time for it, or the space for it. But like you, I would prefer to play that in my living room. I would prefer to play that in VR. In a more engrossing theatrical kind of space. So that might contribute to that, but I really think that there's just too much competition, and it's not just games against games, it's games against movies, against music, against family, against church, against food, against everything. There's just too many things out there to steal our time, and there's only 24 hours in a day. So
Hmm.
at the end of the day, maybe the mobile version of Resident Evil 7, it's not competitive against Dune 2 and the Taylor Swift concert stream and everything else out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the price point probably, I think that the race to the bottom on the mobile market is still a thing. And I think most people in the mobile space are just not wanting to pay that much money, whatever it was, 20 bucks or whatever they were charging for a mobile game, which I think is unfortunate, but it's just kind of the way of the world. All right, I'm going to bring something interesting here that, again, this is consider our main topic, and this is more an opinion piece than it is news, but I'm kind of curious about your thoughts. So, this is from Polygon, courtesy of Ashley Bardhan. Watching a video game is basically playing it. The sub thing here is my total playtime doesn't account for the thousands of hours I spend watching games online. So, before we start this, because the world is an angry place and whatnot, well, let me read this first paragraph, and then I'll give you my little primer here. Okay. So I turn off my phone and prepare for another round of Dead by Daylight. The last match was tense. In the game, solo killers need to capture an entire four-person group of survivors, and this particular survivor team didn't want that to happen. Its members milked every exploit possible, running in strategic circles around the reddish desert map, and their mounting confidence quickly began to outweigh mine. But somehow, we pulled through in the end and won, or I mean, the Twitch streamer I was watching pulled through. Sometimes I find it difficult to distinguish my memories of playing a game from seeing someone else play it. I've probably spent an equal amount of time doing both, becoming a taquito under my blanket on the couch, staring at my TV, the way a cat observes a laser pointer. Both playing and watching result in an intimate understanding of how the game works, imparting crucial knowledge of its combat system, story, weathered characters. Either might make you wish you could scream through your PC and end up to heaven, blah, blah, blah. All right, this is a lot of opinion piece stuff, right? Before we start, I do want to emphasize that I don't think there's any necessarily right way to play a game. And I think how you choose to engage with games as entertainment and whatever is totally up to you. And I also don't think that there's any and she mentions this in the article, the idea of being like a real gamer. I don't really think that that's a thing. I think that the beauty of the games industry is that there are so many ways to interact with it, and there's so many different experiences that you can have within it. I think that's a strength. I don't think that's a negative, and I don't think that should become a barrier or sort of an isolating thing. That being said, well, why don't you go? Is watching video games basically playing it? I'll kick it off to you.
I think little brothers across America are feeling very triggered and attacked right now hearing this.
Okay.
If I watch the Bears play on Sunday, I'm enjoying that experience. I'm engrossed in that experience. It's an immersive experience. That doesn't make me a pro football player. It doesn't mean I'm playing football. It means I'm enjoying football. So there's a distinction, I think, to be made between playing something and still being immersed in it. But that doesn't make it any less enjoyable. And I think that so many of us
Can I
get
can I pause you
just
for a
as
second here?
much. Oh, you can.
People who watch video games by experiencing them in a slightly different way than their peers aren't necessarily equated to real gamers the way sports fans or music nerds are identified by their interests. The limitations of true gaming make sense in some cases, like, while I love telling friends about the 2013 survival horror Outlast gruesome plot, I can't speak to what it feels like to stealth through the game with a dying flashlight. So she brings up both sports and she equates something, I think, to like the opera in here. Yeah, let's see if I can find it. Being an audience for an active hobby like gaming isn't much different from attending the opera when you can't sing or sitting courtside at the Knicks game when you love basketball. Back to you.
Point counterpoint. Great minds think alike. I'm just trying to think of a practical example of one of these.
Okay.
So a good example is, to my Nintendo fans and friends out there, I have never played Zelda Ocarina of Time.
You
And
worthless bastard.
exactly, but I sure feel like I have, because I have watched so many friends of mine play that game so many times. I have
Mm-hmm.
been there for all of the narrative elements of it. I have seen all the frustrations of the water temple. Um, I have thrown many chickens by observation and just armchair quarterbacking that game. So, for all intents and purposes, I sure feel like I've enjoyed the narrative of that game and all the things that game has to offer. I have no desire to play it after all the years I've spent watching it.
Yeah.
So,
You probably don't need
you
to go
know,
back and play it.
probably don't. Spicy hot take of the day. So I don't know if it's the same thing, but I know that so many games can be a collaborative effort as well. Uh, there's something to be said for you and a friend sharing a controller, playing a game collaboratively. You might not be holding the controller, feeling the force feedback, or executing the button for a finishing move at a certain point. But if you're there and if you're enjoying the narrative, I think you're getting a lot of the experience that people point to that they enjoy. I like your point that there's no right or wrong way to play a game. I've got some folks who would strongly disagree. They would say if I'm not playing Halo on legendary difficulty, I'm not getting the true Halo experience. I think I'm having a great time and I'm still enjoying my playthrough on heroic, and I'm still getting, 95% of all the cutscenes and the overall takeaway of that. Why do we have
Yep.
to fight, Chris? Why can't we all get along? Why can't we
So,
all love games whether we're watching them or playing
oh, I'm with you. I totally with you.
them?
So, do you want the answer to this?
Is there an answer? That's
There is
that's
an
what I'm.
answer. The answer is
Okay.
no. Watching video games is not the same as playing video games. Um,
Hmm.
it just it's not. Playing basketball is much different than watching basketball. Singing in the opera is much different than singing in opera. Now, I will make the argument, for example, that like as an audience member going to the opera, that's the point. Like it's a performance. The opera is performing something for the audience. So the core experience of that is not the opera singer's experience. The core experience is you as the audience because it's a performance. Same with a concert. Like it's built for that experience. Games are built as an inherent part to be a part of that experience. So, but again, I think the reason why I'm doing this, again, I don't want to pick on this author because I get where this person's coming from, and I think people are sort of entitled to their own thoughts and whatnot. But I think the author is asking or maybe talking about the wrong question. Like they're making a comparison that doesn't need to be made. You know, if you enjoy watching video games, that's fine. I'm watching Barry on HBO Max, or I guess Max now. Speaking of bad marketing, um, I don't need to be an actor in Barry to enjoy the show. That's not the point of the show. I'm getting all of the experience that the is trying to be conveyed to the audience by watching it, right? Games are different. Part of the experience is participating in the actions and the movements of what's happening. And that has a way of bringing you into that experience in a way. And I would argue, and this is my basic core argument, that that is the fundamental difference between video games and other entertainment mediums is the interactivity. Otherwise, you can just watch a movie, which is what you're doing when you're watching Twitch. Now, maybe you are a part of a community or something that's also involved in that movie in some way, but it is a passive experience for you. Video games are an active experience. and they're the only real sort of entertainment medium in the way we think of them that are an active experience. And so the answer is no. Playing video games is not the same as watching video games. But
What I love
again,
about video games is how much they defy definitions and conventions, and
I
as we
just
have this
defined it for you, Ross. What are
conversation,
you
and
talking about?
as I agree with you, I always think of exceptions to things like this, and I think of video games that are certainly immersive, but that take a more passive experience to them because they're more narrative driven. So for a
But you
game
still
like
have to
that
do
Dragon
something.
Cancer, well, stick with me. So for a game like that Dragon Cancer, you do have to execute an action to move the narrative forward. Or for something that more people might be familiar with, think of something like Netflix's Bandersnatch or Choose Your Own Adventure. Those are games. They're also movies. They're interactive, but they're also collective to a certain degree. So, if I'm watching Bandersnatch or playing a game like The Quarry, uh, with some friends in a room, maybe one person is in charge of the button to execute an action to move the storyline forward. But there's a collective conversation and a shared experience that goes along with it, where we're all engaging in the same decision making, even
Absolutely.
if one person's pressing the button. So I agree of this kind of what you're getting at, that there's this. We're asking the wrong question or setting up a false equivalency here with this article. I think, who cares how you're enjoying the content? Some things are more or less immersive, but I think that
Totally.
that's not the point.
Well,
It's just, who you're
yeah.
with and what you're doing and how you're enjoying something.
Well, I think that's the core of this article and why I found it interesting. Because
Hmm.
ultimately, I chose to talk about it for 20 minutes, but the ultimate answer is it ends with like, who the fuck cares, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're enjoying the experience, that's fine. It's the same thing I tell my students. First day of class, it's like the second slide I give them. I am not interested in talking about what is and is not a video game in this class. That's not an interesting conversation for me. I think there's far more intriguing discussions we can have about the games industry than what is and is not a video game, right? I think people tend to get caught in the idea of defining things, because humans like categorizing stuff. We like taking this chaotic universe and putting it into buckets that we can. Um, I just had a conversation with a friend over Facebook today about the term neurotypical and neurodivergent and how I don't use those terms because they're not real terms. They're not clinical terms. They have no meaning. They're just things that people have started to use to put themselves into various buckets or to put others into various buckets, because it sounds smart or whatever. But those terms mean nothing. They have no intrinsic value when you're talking about clinical related things. Now, that I come from that angle because my background's healthcare, and I think it's important to, when you're talking about things like mental health or disease states or whatever, like, you do need to be very careful and very specific because we have a history in healthcare of just attributing stuff to random things. And then that does a disservice to the people that are actually suffering from those conditions. So if you're really truly suffering from a condition, or maybe not even suffering, but just, we used to use the term plagued by a condition, right? We don't really use that anymore. But um, let's say you're somebody that has like really severe OCD, and you have all these other people talking about how they're like, oh man, I'm neurodivergent because I can't go into the bathroom without like checking under the cabinet to make sure there's a monster there or something. Like, that's not fucking OCD. That's just you being a weirdo, right? Where you have this other person who has a serious debilitating condition that is trying to navigate it through whatever course of action, course of care. So that's why I think that those are important. But when you're talking about things like this for video games, like, that's not that important. Whether you consider playing a video game the same as, like, that has no impact on other people's emotional states or their ability to receive care for, something. So I totally agree with you, but I will go back to playing the quarry because we played. Oh my God, what is the Until Dawn, the one before the quarry?
Hmm.
Um, when we were playing it, the person holding the controller is having a much different experience than the people around them watching. Even though they may be contributing to what's going on,
Hmm.
and they may be like, oh, when something happens, the person with the controller is the one that's responsible for like activating and doing all the stuff. And particularly when time is of the essence and there's like those quick time events and stuff, the person sitting on the couch pondering their decision is not the one in charge. And I think that is a pretty noticeable distinction. Um, so I think that if you can enjoy video games, particularly uh, something like From Software, there's been a lot of conversation about how difficult um, the new Elden Ring patch is, right? That difficulty has a direct implication on if certain people are even going to be able to play that game. Not only that maybe you're not good at video games, but like if you have some sort of mental or physical disability that prevents you from sort of fast twitch reaction, you will never be able to play that game. So
Mhm.
watching it may give you that sense of being able to um, be invested in the world and overcome these challenges in a way that you wouldn't be able to otherwise, which I think is great. But the end result is that it is different. And then lastly, the part where she talks about memory, I hear you. I hear you, Ashley. I can't. Half the things I think I remember, I look back on, I was like, I don't know if that's true or not. Um, but that's just time makes fools of us all, I suppose. Um, so yeah, there. That I thought that was interesting. That was kind of my thought on it. And I really one of the things I love about video games is their ability to draw you in with this interactive element um, that does not exist. You can be in a movie, right? You can be in it, and I see about a movie like once a week at movie theaters, and I love movies, and you can be in it, but there's a different kind of like in it with a video game where you get through like one of those like really crazy moments, and then like everything sort of calms down. And you're like, oh man, that was intense. Um, I think it's great. And that's all I got for you. End scene.
And scene.
You got anything else?
I kind of going back to the article a little bit and these false equivalencies. I sympathize to some folks' need to categorize things or over categorize things and add definitions. Because they make us feel warm and safe and cuddly if we can categorize things and define them more succinctly. We can control them a little bit more. But I think when it starts obfuscating clarity, it's really counterintuitive. And when I see so many just over contextualizations, over definitions, or over categorizations, it just makes me a little bit sad because I think something gets lost in translation. And
Absolutely.
I'm seeing this more and more in games now, but I think of it from a music perspective. I'm a big fan of metal music, and there are so many subgenres of metal out there, whether it's black metal or death metal or psychedelic metal or heavy death metal or prog metal or symphonic metal. There's just so many different subclasses, and where those definitions help you understand what you're about to experience or what you're about to hear. That's a great classification. It's a great definition. It's a great label. But when it starts just adding more confusion than it does clarity, anytime I see a game description on Steam and it's got 9 different genres, it's like, here's a third person platforming roguelite puzzle platformer solver strategy game. I'm like, what? You listed 9 things.
Dating sim.
You're dating sim, of course. Ponyville, and it's just too many things. Like you have not added any clarity. You have thrown words at this.
Yeah,
So it's like, if you can't do it in 2 words to define it, let it be obscure and let me decide for myself what it is I'm about to play.
I
Especially games
agree.
that defy conventions, or
Eh,
films
eh,
that defy conventions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. There's certain things that just don't fit neatly into a box. And also, you and I come from an academic world in many ways, and academia is just rife with trying to categorize and put things into boxes, right? And I come from the healthcare world, which is, I mean, that's what it's built around. Like, how do I define your condition? And then that definition leads me to the course of care for you. And in those cases, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with digging into and having experts really attempt to figure out the nuances of these different classifications. I mean, just look at something like evolution, right? Like creating familial trees and looking at DNA studies, like that specifically requires that level of in-depth work. But when you're talking about just day-to-day interactions and being a part of your life, you don't need that. And I see that a lot of this is one of my things without again going too deep. Um, I see that a lot with like politics, right? Like one of the things that blows my mind, and I get why people do it, but people have this insistence with having being attributed to a political party, right?
Mhm.
And like I have never considered myself in my life to be a Democrat or Republican, and then the worst is independent because that's just like a catch-all for nonsense, right? It's just like, well, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, so I'm an independent, which means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. All it means is you are not a part of these two dichotomous structures that we just created out of nowhere, right? There is no left and right. That's not a thing that exists. It only exists because that is the system in which we live in. Um, and research has shown time and time again that if you ask people questions about policy, like actual policy about whatever, that they will the America, we agree on like 80% of the same stuff. If you just ask them about the policy, but then as soon as you attribute, like a common example is like, do you think that insurance companies should be required to keep children on for their families until they're 26 years old? That has an overwhelming support. It's like 83% or something of the population agrees with that statement. But if you ask the question, do you agree with Barack Obama's ACA change that allows children to stay on until they're 26? It drops down to like 44%. So as soon as you attribute it to a group, that changes the thing, even though the policy hasn't changed, right? So I think when you are going out in the person when you're going out in the person when you're going out in the world, you should realize that both you and everybody around you is part of a dynamic person that is not locked into these categorizations. You may be gay, but that is not all that you are. You may be whatever, Latino, but that is not all that you are. And even within those frameworks that kind of help you maybe figure out your sense of identity and who you want to be, that should be seen as like a foundation to build from, not as a box to keep you constrained to, if that makes sense.
Said Chris. Absolutely.
And so I think that that's a big thing. And the definition of gamers is very simple. Like I don't really consider myself a gamer. I'll use that term occasionally just for sort of like simplicity of conversation. But I don't know what that means. If a gamer is somebody that likes video games and plays video games, then sure. If that's what you want to call me, I'm in it. You two guys are.
And you're also a business person and a dog and cat dad and many other things. Identity politics is hard, and it's certainly non-binary. There are
Yeah.
many things that make up who we are. We are all little snowflakes.
Yeah, I just think it does you a disservice if you stick
Mhm.
yourself into a box, and particularly because I feel like it's nowadays too. And we're getting definitely off the topic here, but um, I feel it's a very reactive thing, feeling like you have to create your identity out of a stuff. And maybe that's a sense like you and I grew up in a time where the the concept of identity was about expansion, where we're like, oh, women can have any job that they want. We are allowed to have women doctors and engineers, but when I grew up in 81, 30 years before that, that was like a big topic of conversation. Nowadays, that's not really, thankfully, it's, just go and do what you want, right? Um, so it was sort of about expanding yourself out of the box. Nowadays, it feels like you need to put these labels on yourself so that you can have an identity. But I think people's identities are much more interesting when they don't have these check boxes. Like, I want to know about Ross. Who is Ross the person, right? How would you talk about yourself? So like those are the kind of questions I'm interested in. I want to know about you. And if you being X or Y is a part of how you navigate the world and see yourself, that's great. But I don't think it should be the constraining factor in who you are as a person. Um, so go play your video games, Ross. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's more important. I think if we all spent a little more time playing video games, we'd all be a lot less stressed.
Oh man,
Maybe. Or more stressed. It depends what we're playing. I don't know. Maybe I have to go play Resident Evil 7 on mobile now.
Yeah, yeah, you could be one of the 2,000 people.
Hmm.
Um, awesome. Well, this feels like a good time to end this. Ross, thank you so much for being on the show again. It's lovely to have you back. I missed you. I missed you when you weren't here.
It's been too long, Chris. It's been too long.
Yeah. Well, that has been episode 30 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Again, I am your host, Chris. I've got Pumpkin and Baby. You can find us every week on Twitch at the GDEX, where we do this at 10 a.m. Eastern Time live. And we've got a chat going, so you can participate in the chat. And Ross, you've been very active in the chat here. Some of our guests are not, but you can ask questions. You can be a part of the conversation. Also, you can join us at the Sandbox.Space and join our weekly email. Like I said, we post that every week, which includes the articles we talked about today, as well as a link to the YouTube version of this podcast. Of course, join us at GDEX. We'd love to have you out in GDEX in beautiful Columbus, Ohio, in October 24th through the 27th, Halloween weekend. We're going to do some fun Halloween stuff. But otherwise, thank you so much for being a part of the show. We'll see you next week.